I saw your pictures. It was so cool. You know, Cole did that when he was in Scouts, and I just thought it was the neatest thing that you could go and you could spend the night there in the aquarium. Such a neat opportunity. It's so beautiful. I could sit in that big room forever and just watch.
Before we slept.
I could just sit there. It's gorgeous. I love it.
I got to watch fish do their business all night long.
I'm sure you did. Yep.
It
But
was
it's
weird,
pretty.
though.
It's really, those big whale sharks are beautiful. And the skates and the rays, and they come up against. Did you do the touch tank?
Yes, we did.
That's fun.
Yeah, we saw the dolphin show, the sea lion show.
Nice.
The dolphins upgraded.
Oh, really?
Like they got more dolphins and they upgraded the showing area.
I haven't seen the dolphin show. I've seen the sea lions, and I was impressed with that because they're so cute.
Yeah. My one of the boys who were there, they weren't really supposed to be there, but no one would stay home with them. So not any of my boys, of course. It was one of the Girl Scouts boys. And so he told me that they used to have 5 bull sharks, and then it was 3, and then it was 4, and now it's 2.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
So, well, sharks for everyone.
Yep. I'm trying to find out if my friend's son is doing the same thing that Savannah is doing, because I commented on this because they were coming to the area. Where is it? Where's my comment? Because I'm curious if they're doing the same thing Savannah's doing. Maybe I can go see them all. I don't know, because we have gym meet this weekend, but we're almost done with the gym meets. We've only got a couple more. Oh, there it is. It's at Friendship Springs. Orlando.
Is Darcy supposed to be here today?
Darcy is in North Carolina today.
Oh, fancy.
No, I don't know. They decided they would stay out and have fun. So I'm not sure exactly where in North Carolina, but somewhere fun, hopefully.
Yeah, I went to Augusta, Great Wolf Lodge.
Yes.
And it was great.
I have not been to that one. I've been to the one in North Carolina near Charlotte. One of our friends from church, their son did his first Boy Scout ski trip, and he was so excited to go, and he broke the lower part of his leg in 2 places. Drew, there'll be room over here because Lewis isn't coming.
Okay.
And there'll be room over there where Darcy usually sits, or you can just pull up a chair to the back side of that table if you want. That will work too. So today's lab is going to be kind of action-packed. We have a lot to do in a short amount of time. So we're going to have to roll through it very, very quickly.
My siblings are watching this TV show called Action Pack, and I've been humming the theme song.
I haven't seen that one, Action Pack. I don't know that.
It's just this cartoon TV show on Netflix.
Oh, well, Jason and I are finally watching Downton Abbey. We have never gotten to it, and it's been on our list. It's just we had a lot of other stuff that was on our list, so it took us a while to get there. So now we're finally watching it.
Katie and Michael enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I knew we would like it. It's just one of those things that you can only get to so much at one time. So I did have my MRI yesterday. It took forever. It was a 4:30 appointment. I didn't leave until 8. Yeah, for real. Because I got there at 4 for my 4:30 appointment. They didn't get me back until 6. It was an hour in the machine. And then I had to get dressed afterwards. And I asked for the CD, and they're like, okay, but it'll take 10 or 20 minutes. And I said, sure. And they said, here, you can wait in this room. So I waited and I waited and I waited, and it got to be like 40 minutes. And I thought, okay, we are now double now the end of your time frame. So I asked these ladies at the desk, and turned out they had it the whole time. They just didn't know they had it. They were all apologizing all over themselves. Oh, they brought it up here 20 minutes ago. I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, just give it to me. But they had me for an hour in the MRI tube. It's a big tube, right? They put you in it. So if you're all claustrophobic, it's like panic time, right? And I'm not, so it didn't bother me. But they had to put all these like, those wedges and cushions and things they use to position you up under my arm. So they had my arm really close to my body and then bent a little like this. Then they put a weight on my hand so I wouldn't move it, a weight on my chest, and then they strapped me down, and I had an IV in this arm because they wanted to put in contrast. It was not comfortable. It wasn't, it didn't hurt, but it was, this hurt because this is not a comfortable position for this arm right now. So they had it there for an hour, and I was just ready to be done. Ready to be done. Yes. All right. So let's see who just came in. Anybody for us? Or?
Yes, Anthony.
Anthony, come on in. Over there in the kitchen. It really tastes bad. This gum really tastes bad. We've all been there. Get one and you're like, no, thank you.
You can actually buy Birdie Bots every flavor of beans, including like earwax and all that stuff.
Earthworm, dirt.
I don't want to get that. Earwax flavored jelly beans?
Yeah, kind of funny.
I know there's like dog food and vomit.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll go ahead and start since I think most of us are here. I'm not sure what Sky is doing, but I know.
Wait a minute, how do you know what earwax tastes like?
I don't know. I guess you get it on your finger and then accidentally put your finger in your mouth. I mean, I hope nobody's eating it. All right.
That's gross.
So we are moving now from invertebrate to primate, which is the whole point of this unit, right? And last week, what did we do? We did worms and cnidarians, right? And sponges.
Dissected more insects.
Yeah, we dissected a worm, which is not a arthropod. So the insects will be today. We're not going to dissect an insect, but I do have some samples for you to look at that are really kind of cool. So invertebrate to primate. So today we're doing mollusks, arthropods, and echinoderms. And we will be dissecting an echinoderm and a mollusk, and then you guys will be doing a little project with your own echinoderm that you'll be taking home and bringing back. It should be really kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah, should be fun.
I want to bring it back.
So here's your lesson 23 homework review. So why is it better to classify animals as chordates or non-chordates rather than vertebrates or invertebrates? Drew?
Some animals, the skeletons are made of cartilage, so they have what's it called? A spinal cord, but it isn't.
A central nerve cord or a notochord, right?
It's not a backbone.
But it's not a bone, right? What's an example of an animal like that? A shark, skate ray. Yep. So that is phylum Chordata, right? All possess the notochord or central nerve cord, but do not have a bony spine. So chondrichthyes is our best example of that, but sharks, skates, and rays. There are a couple other things too, but these are the big ones. All right, so what's an example of an animal that possesses bilateral symmetry? Who can tell me that?
Isn't it human?
Yeah, human is a great example. Yep, humans. That was one out of the 3 options you had. And how about an example of an animal that possesses radial symmetry? Yep, sea star. And how about no symmetry? Sponge. Very good. All right, so true or false? All animals possess some form of locomotion or ability to move around and find food. False, right? Why? Who doesn't move? Do you remember? Like, yeah, there's some sea animals like sponges and anemones, right?
But those count as animals?
They are animals. Yeah, we talked about them last week. They're animals. So,
Yes, like I got that.
Yeah, I
so
got that
some animals are what we call sessile, right? And that means like sponges and anemones, they don't move to find their food. So remember that even though sponges might look like a plant or anemones might look like a plant, they're animals and they can't move on their own. All right, so what is one type of specialized cell that all cnidarians have? Do you remember what it's called?
No.
It's called a cnidocyte. And what do they do? Those are the ones that sting, right? Stinging cells, cnidocytes. So which is not a phyla of worms? We had a couple different options here. and cephalopoda is
I was
not.
gonna say, but I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot what the other options were, because these are mollusks, right? But annelida, nematoda, platyhelminth. What are annelida? Do you remember? Segmented worms. So that's like our earthworm. Worms with segments. Whoops. Nematoda are roundworms. And then the last one we had there was flatworm, platyhelminth.
You said these kind of worms?
No, they're not worms. Those are going to be arthropods. So we're getting there in a second. So we've gone from sponges to cnidarians to worms. And yes, that's a worm. It's a type of aquatic worm, a marine worm. Isn't that cool? So sponges to cnidarians to worms. And now today we're moving on to mollusks, arthropods, and echinoderms. I have two animals in this picture. What do we have here? What kind of animals? Mollusk, arthropod, or echinoderm? What do you see?
Snail and the grasshopper.
Yep. So what's the snail? Do you know? You know what kind of animal he is?
It's a arthropod.
Not an arthropod. He's a mollusk. And the grasshopper is
I don't know.
an arthropod. Okay. This is a real animal, believe it or not.
Wow.
Sometimes they're called blue dragons. He's a type of mollusk. He's a mollusk that doesn't have a shell, but look at how beautiful he is. Isn't he gorgeous?
Does he have 4 eyes?
No, you'll see his face in a minute, but they're about hand sized actually, because I've seen some pictures of people that have caught them and they've got them in their hands and they're about hand size. I would love to see one for real. They don't live near our country, so you'd have to travel to see them. So this is what their faces look like. Isn't it cute? They're actually really kind of cute.
It used to be like a stuffed animal.
Yep. So here are the characteristics of mollusks. So mollusks have bilateral symmetry. They're tripoblastic, which means they're made with 3 layers. So that's an endoderm, ectoderm, and mesoderm when they're developing as an embryo. They have organ systems and some level of organization. Their body's soft, but it's unsegmented. So they don't have like a head, thorax, abdomen, like an arthropod will have. Their body's divisible into 3 regions, and they've got a head, what you call like a visceral mass, and then a foot. So their foot is this big piece on the bottom. So when you look back at that snail, their foot's the part you see touching the ground, and it's a big, long foot. And then they have their,
Do they have 1 foot?
they have 1 foot usually, and it's a big foot. And then they have this visceral mass. Some of them have more than 1 foot, but a lot of them just have 1. And that's just kind of like whatever the rest of them is. And then their head's usually pretty obvious. So the body's covered by a mantle, and that's what we call their kind of like their skin, and then a shell. And not in all cases, not all mollusks have shells, but a lot do. And they can be found in all kinds of habitats, aquatic and terrestrial. What's terrestrial mean?
Where do they live?
Yep, that's where they live, aquatic and terrestrial. What's terrestrial, Drew?
Does that mean like?
What's an extraterrestrial?
Yeah, no, I was saying this from outside the planet. So
Right.
Inside the planet.
Yeah, but technically we're talking Earth. So terrestrial organisms live on ground. Yeah, not in water, basically, right? They live on the ground.
Does that mean fish are extraterrestrial?
No, fish are aquatic. So they can be aquatic or terrestrial. So some of them live in the sea, they're marine, and some of them live in fresh water, right? So their body is hemocoel, through which blood circulates. That's just talks about how their circulation goes. We're not going to get too picky about that. The digestive system is well developed and complex. It has a radula. When grasping, it's a grasping structure, and it has these teeth that are made of chitin. That's the same stuff, remember, that's the structural part of mushrooms. It's the same material, and it's used for feeding. So if you've ever watched a snail eat up close, and a couple years ago we had snails for class, and stop doing that, and you could watch them eat. I have some close-up videos of them eating, but it's like a little tongue that comes out of their mouth, and it's kind of sharp, and they can use it to grab at stuff. It's really interesting. So most of them have a radula, that's what it's called. And their nervous system is made up of what we call ganglia. So ganglia are basically like a knot of nerve fibers. It's not quite like a brain, but it's like a little hub. Okay, so they'll have like a hub, and then it'll spread out, and then maybe like another hub. And so that's how their nervous system works. They've got an open circulatory system with a heart and an aorta. So by open, it means that like ours is closed. Things don't go in and out except right there in the capillaries. Open is just kind of more, and it's kind of hard to describe in this case, but what you need to know is they do typically have 1 heart. And respiration through gills. They have this ventral muscular foot. And I actually have video of the snail we had a couple years ago on the side of the tank moving, and you can actually see these muscular contractions move through its foot like a wave pattern as it moves. It was really kind of cool. So they do have something like kidneys, and they tend to have separate sexes, so male and female, and reproduce sexually. And fertilization sometimes is internal and sometimes it's external. Now, a real interesting thing about snails, some species of snails use these things called love darts. If we have time for a video at some point, I'll have to show you, but they actually have these spines that they can fire snails. They can fire spines at the snail they want to mate with. And when that spine hits them, it's almost like a Cupid arrow. It kind of stimulates them to want to mate. It's a weird, weird thing, as they shoot them. So the scientists have called them love darts, which is kind of hilarious. So our class is a mollusks. All right, so we have gastropod. Okay, so when you look at this, there are two words here. Okay, this is like stomach and foot. And that's how this is put together. So these guys have 4 body parts. They have a head, a mantle, shell, a muscular foot, and a mass or a hump of organs generally enclosed within the shell. And they have that little radula. And they can be herbivores or carnivores or sometimes both. So these are examples of gastropods. Look at that little snail face. Isn't it cute? I think they're so cute. And this guy too, that's some kind of like a sea slug. That's really neat, right? Then we've got bivalvia. Okay, this is exactly what it sounds like. So what does bi mean in like Latin terms or Greek? Do you know what that means? Bi, 2, like a bicycle has 2 wheels, right? By what? Biweekly? Yep. Or bilateral symmetry. Very good. You could also do binary code, which is 1s and 0s, right? When we're doing programming. So bivalvia means it has 2 valves, and the valves in this case are what we refer to as their shells. So these are things like clams, mussels, scallops, and they are oysters, right? They live inside 2 shells that can open this way. And if you look right here, this clam is actually out of the shell. Can you see him? That's what the clam actually looks like when he opens the shell and comes out. So very often you don't see them that way. You usually see them inside. And then oysters can produce pearls in them. Do you know how they do that?
No.
So if you've ever opened an oyster or seen the inside of an oyster, like in this case, you can see some of the inside.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard to open them. Very hard to open them because they are very muscular and they hold those shells tight. But if you open one up, the inside of an oyster shell is made of this beautiful, like kind of iridescent white material that they call mother of pearl. You may see it sometimes like in jewelry, or they put it on guitars, the little pieces and like little buttons and things in guitars. So that's mother of pearl. And the reason it's called mother of pearl is because it's the same material used, hey Sky, to produce pearls. So what these guys do is if a little piece of sand or something gets inside of their shell and gets into their body, it irritates them, it scratches them, and they don't like it. So the way they protect themselves from it is they start producing the same stuff that they produce to line the inside of their shell, that mother of pearl, and they produce it to start covering that little grain of sand so it doesn't scratch them anymore. And then they continue to do it and continue to do it. They put on layer after layer, and that's how you get an actual pearl. So there are cultured pearls where they send people in to collect oysters, and they force them open and they put like a little plastic bead, they jam it in there and put them back in, and that will force that oyster to then create a pearl around it. And then there are natural pearls, which are you go and you find the oyster in the ocean somewhere, or maybe a freshwater one, and you pull it out, and there you have a different actual pearl that's been formed with sand in the middle. So cultured pearls are usually less expensive than
Pearls are just made out of sand?
They're made out of the sand in the middle, and then the outside is the same material they use to line the inside of their shells. So then we have cephalopoda. This is the other big group of mollusks. So cephalopod, so pod we know is foot. What's cephala? Does anybody know what that is?
No.
That's head, okay? Your cephalic region, your head. So these guys, this is head and foot. So cephalopods are usually marine, and they're characterized by bilateral symmetry. It may seem like you would think an octopus would be radial, but it's not. It's bilateral. And they have a head, usually tentacles or arms, which are a modified version of their foot. Most are carnivores, they have a radula, and they swim by jet propulsion. They usually have some way to pull water in and squirt it out really hard so that they can swim quickly. And so examples would be things like this octopus, a cuttlefish, a squid, and a nautilus is actually a cephalopod that is chosen to live to make itself a little shell, which most of them don't do that.
What else? A poor squid.
Yeah, cuttlefish are really interesting in particular because have you ever seen in a bird cage, sometimes there's that white kind of oval shaped thing that people put in the bird cage for the birds to peck at? That's usually the hard structure that's inside of a cuttlefish body. And cuttlefish, like some squid and octopi or octopuses, both is correct, can change their colors rapidly based on their background. It's pretty cool. So octopuses are some of the smartest animals we have. It's really interesting how smart they are.
Did you hear about the octopus that slipped out of its tank into a drain pipe and made a break for the sea? Or what about the cephalopod that figured out how to open those child-proof pill bottles? Which, let's be honest, certain adult humans have a hard time doing sometimes. It's fair to say that octopuses are smart. But when we talk about the intelligence of other animals, we tend to fall into the trap of comparing them to humans, testing for everything from the size of their brains to qualities like emotions or learning abilities. But octopuses are very different from people. I don't know if you've noticed. In the evolutionary tree, they are a long way off from us, and they're probably way more complex than we might realize or understand. So your brain is in your head, and so are the brains of other animals that we consider intelligent, like dogs and dolphins and chimps and crows. Octopuses have central brains in their heads as well, and we have some anatomical similarities. For example, their brains generate similar electrical patterns as vertebrates, and they seem to have specialized brain areas for things like learning and memory storage. They also seem to have a dominant or preferred eye, which is an example of lateralization, similar to the way that people are right or left-handed. The weird thing is about 2/3 of their neurons are in their arms. Each arm literally has a mind of its own to do its own problem solving and act independently, while the other arms are doing something completely different. In a 2013 research study, scientists isolated arms from dead octopuses in order to test those neural responses. And they found that the isolated arms recoil from being pinched or from touching tap water or acetic acid. This suggests that they might have some kind of nociceptors or special neurons that sense danger or pain, like ones that make us pull our hand back from touching a hot stove. But unlike in humans, their arms can respond to these kinds of stimuli without being attached to a central brain. Other experiments have found that severed arms wiggle around and even grab onto food. So anatomically, octopuses are some pretty cool invertebrates. But what about their behavior? Octopuses have been observed using tools like picking up 2 coconut halves to use as a mobile home and manipulating objects in a way that looks a lot like playing. One 1993 study published in the Journal of Comparative Psychology even suggested that octopuses seem to display distinct personalities, reacting to food and threats in individual but consistent ways. One octopus might be consistently curious and daring, while another is careful and shy. Another study in 2001 seemed to show that young octopuses change their behavior over the course of weeks, becoming more alert to danger and learning from their environment. So octopuses do seem to have some sort of advanced cognition, learning and changing their behaviors over time. Even though we might see a lot of ourselves in the behavior of octopuses, we certainly didn't get there on the same path. Our vertebrate evolutionary branch split from the mollusks about 1.2 billion years ago, so human and octopus intelligence evolved completely separately. Scientists have a lot of different theories to try and explain how humans evolved intelligence, and one of them relates to our social lifestyle. Basically, forming long-lasting relationships could have meant better survival. But octopuses don't have that specific evolutionary pressure. They only live for a couple of years and are almost always alone. So how do these creatures evolve their intelligence and central brain while other mollusks, like oysters, didn't? Well, it might have something to do with the most obvious thing that separates an octopus from an oyster: the shell. At some point in their evolution, the octopus's ancestors probably traded the safety of a shell for freedom. Suddenly, they could move around and forage for food using a variety of hunting skills. So they also had to worry about becoming dinner, which led to all kinds of strategies to avoid being eaten, like hiding, camouflage, tool use, and speed. And all that self-preservation requires some sort of intelligence. The smarter octopuses would have had a better chance of survival. Octopuses might not look like us, move like us, live like us, or probably even think like us, but they have somehow evolved intelligence in ways we're only beginning to understand. Thank you for watching this episode of SciShow, which was brought to you by our patrons on Patreon. If you would like to help support,
They're pretty cool in that they can definitely do things that we can't even comprehend them doing. So here's an example of a cuttlefish and how they're able to change color. This is pretty amazing. You see him?
Biologist Sarah Zielinski took these shots, and if you needed a helping hand to find the cuttlefish, don't feel bad.
I've certainly taken photos in the past. I've come back to look at them and I'm sure there's a cuttlefish in there somewhere.
These cephalopods are master camouflagers, but while they're hiding their body, they're revealing something about their mind, or at least their visual system.
In very simple terms, they can tell us what they can see via the body patterns they produce on their skin.
They produce these body patterns by expanding or contracting chromatophores, little ink sacs on their skin, and they use different displays for different reasons, like for male-to-male combat.
Two males will turn into each other and pass these kind of waves of dark chromatophores over a really bright sort of iridescent stripy body pattern, and somehow solve these these combats. Eventually, one male, gives up and goes away.
And then there's this unsolved mystery. It changes color when it grabs a snack.
That doesn't make perfect sense because it seems to make it very conspicuous. So one theory is that, it's just a happy signal of how excited it is to have caught something, some response that it doesn't have any control over.
But most of the time, they seem to be using their chromatophores more intentionally, primarily to blend in.
Because otherwise they're more likely to be eaten. So it's very important they don't make mistakes about ambiguous visual information.
And ambiguous visual information is specifically what Zielinski's interested in. So here's the experimental setup. Print out laminated patterns like this checkerboard and stick them in a tank.
And we place the animals in the tank and we record the body patterns that they produce.
You're seeing them on squares, but they do the same thing on top of circles.
They produce the disruptive pattern where you get these blocky components with high contrast components.
But when you put a cuttlefish over squiggles, it produces a.
So the motley pattern where you get these little groups of dark spots showing across the body.
So what happens when you put a cuttlefish on something in between? When you put them on incomplete circles. When we see something like this, our visual system likes to fill in the blanks, something we do constantly, Zielinski says.
The reason why cartoons and sketches work is because we can recognize objects based on their edges alone.
And we can identify objects even if they're broken up or
Have an object that is occluded by another object. That's no problem for us. We can still work out what the object is most of the time. And I was interested to know whether cuttlefish can solve similar problems.
And Zielinski and colleagues report this week that cuttlefish do seem to.
Fill in those gaps and interpret those little segments as a whole circle.
Or anyway, the broken circles count with the same camo pattern as full circles. So if you're wondering, I see these as circles too, what's the big deal? The weird thing here is that there's no reason why cuttlefish, which are
Invertebrates, and they're in the same group as slugs and snails.
should see the world the way we do.
Yes, it's like they're alien, but we also seem to have so much in common with them.
The next step.
Because we can't share the perceptive experience of a cuttlefish, it's hard to know exactly what it is that they're doing to fill in that missing information. And I want to try and get a better grasp on that and also see whether they actually respond to true illusory contours.
So you're going to show optical illusions to cuttlefish?
That's what I'm hoping to do, yes.
Pretty fascinating, right? They're really smart critters. Yeah. He got some of the checkers, but not all of the checkers. But he could recognize that it was a square and somehow created a square. And that's really crazy. And the fact that they can fill in the blanks, that's huge.
What if it's actually clear?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They'll find whatever color is best and they'll really blend in. It's pretty neat. So the organ that mollusks use to move, dig, or catch is called a foot. The tissue that covers them is a mantle, right? Organs that absorb oxygen or what from the water are the gills. Circle the letter that's most true. Okay, so mollusks have a foot, right? and they have a mantle. They're not vertebrates. So this picture is showing this little dude here, and what's he using? He's going to be using that radula, right? Circle the letter of each sentence that's true about gastropods. They don't always have two shells. No, those are going to be bivalves. They are mollusks, and they do use that radula. So an animal that eats plants is what? What do we call it? An herbivore, right? And how about animals that eat other animals?
Carnivore.
All right. And true or false, bivalves have two shells. Bivalves, clams,
Yes.
they have two shells, right? So this is circle the letter of the sentence that tells how filter feeders get food. The filter feeders kind of just sit there and strain the water as it comes by, just like a sponge, remember? And let's see what's true about cephalopods. Do they eat plants? Do they live in an ocean? Yes. And do they have tentacles? Yes, they do. So cephalopods do not have a foot, true or false?
False.
They have
I didn't hear
their
that.
foot is called a modified foot. So they have all those arms and it's a foot, but it's a modified foot.
Wait, what was the question? I didn't hear.
Oh, I said, do they have, do cephalopods have a foot? And they do, it's just a modified foot. So this is
This is pretty or
Arthropoda. I see two arthropods here. What do we see?
the mantis and the.
Yeah, some kind of a mantis and a butterfly. Really cool, isn't it? So what are the characteristics here of our arthropods? So they're trypoplastic. Again, we talked about that. That has to do with their development as an embryo. They exhibit organ systems at a level of organization. They have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. You've heard this before, I'm sure, when you're talking about arthropods. Head, thorax, abdomen. And then they have jointed appendages that help them move. Their legs have joints in them. And let's see, they have a coelomic cavity that's filled with their blood. It's just kind of in the middle, an open circulatory system. Their head bears compound eyes. What are compound eyes? Do you guys know? So compound eyes is like, you have kind of, one eyeball here and one eyeball here. Their eyes are made of many smaller eyes. So if you ever look at like a close-up of a fly's eyes, for example, they have these big eyes on the front, but they're made of a bunch of tiny, tiny eyes, which is why they can see you from behind when you're trying to come swat them, because their eyes kind of go all the way around. No, we're on 24 today. So let's see, they have an exoskeleton, it's made of chitin again. Whoop, didn't mean to click that. And they are terrestrial, and they have little tubules that they can breathe through. And there are some aquatic ones that excrete green glands or coaxial glands. Can you think of an aquatic arthropod? What's an animal that has jointed appendages, an exoskeleton, a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, and it lives in the water? How about a crab or a lobster? Yeah, they do. Crabs are a little harder to tell, but lobsters and crayfish, however you want to call them. They're unisexual, and fertilization is either internal or external. Unisexual means they have separate sexes. And they have a well-developed digestive system. They respire through their general body surface or tracheae. So they have little holes in their shells. That's how they breathe. Sometimes they have some gills, like crabs have some type of gills, and so do lobsters and crayfish. Let's see, they contain sensory organs like hairs, antennae, simple compound eyes, auditory organs, and statocyst is just another type of organ. So here are subphyla. Okay, so we can't really say now we're going into kingdom, phylum, class, because there's too many of these. We have what we call subphyla, and then those goes into classes. So we have these guys here, Chelicerata, and these are things like spiders, scorpion, harvestmen, mites, and ticks. Okay, you guys know what spiders and scorpions are. Harvestmen, mites, and ticks. Do you know what harvestmen are? So harvestmen are what we call daddy long legs very often. So they have 6 pairs of jointed appendages, 2 mouth and 2 in their thorax. So they have an appendage in their mouth. So when you say, oh, they have 8 legs, they do have 8 legs, but they have 6 pairs of appendages. So it's really like they have 4 on their body, 4 pairs, that makes their 8 legs. And then they have these 2 pairs in their mouth. So,
Your digestive system counts a mouth.
yeah, part of your mouth is part of it. Yep. And then they have specialized appendages. Sometimes they have little ones in the front that grab, ones in the front that's back in the swim. They're all different.
But like tongue doesn't another mouth.
No, it's part of your digestive system. Yep. So hexapoda, these are our winged insects. These are the ones we call insecta. These are our insects in general. So remember this, by the way, if you see a daddy long legs, he does fall into this arachnid category. He does fall into the subphyta, but he's not a spider.
I see.
Daddy long legs is not a spider, just so you know. So these winged ones, these are the guys you think of as insects, right? And they have a pair of antennae, a pair of mandibles, those little, right? And 1 pair of maxillae, that's another little thing in their mouth, right? And they have this hypopharynx, which resembles a tongue. Sometimes you can see a fly stick a little tongue out. You ever seen them do that? They'll do that. And labum, which is described as the floor of the mouth. It's just the way their mouth is constructed. 3 pairs of jointed appendages, 1 on each thoracic segment. So they have 3 pairs, 1 on each thoracic segment. So that would mean their thorax has 6 legs. So they have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. And on their thorax, you're going to have 3 legs on each side. That's how you tell that it's an insect. And they have this thing called a gonopore on the back part of their abdomen. And that's sort of their like urogenital system. And a lot of them have wings, but not all of them have wings. Ants, for example, are going to fall in this category. Some ants have wings, some ants don't. Some species of ants have wings. If you look at our ant farm, which is over on the dining room table today, they're doing their thing. There's one in there with wings. She's not, from what I've read, she's not a queen. She's just like a sexually immature ant that grew wings, and she could go off and become a queen. But since she's kind of stuck there, she probably won't turn into one. But I'm very curious to see what happens because she's the only one with wings. Now we got crustacea. Okay, crustaceans. You've heard of crustaceans. These are crabs, lobsters, crayfish, shrimp, krill, prawns, woodlice, barnacles, all these things like this.
Barnacles?
Barnacles are crustaceans. So they have 2 pairs of antennae, they have gills, 7 or more pairs of jointed appendages. They use these for swimming and walking, clasping. So they have some that they grab onto their mates with to transfer sperm or eggs. And they're pretty much mostly aquatic. Now there is a terrestrial crustacean that I bet every one of you is very familiar with. And it's actually a crustacean, not an insect. Anybody ever played with the roly-poly? Roly-poly is a crustacean. It's not an insect. Isn't that weird? If you look at them up close, you'll see what I mean. If you look at these categories, you know, these things that separate them, you'll see why it's a crustacean. But yeah, the way their little feet work and stuff. Then you've got these guys, Myriapoda. Okay, here's a good one, Myriapoda. If I said, oh, I have a myriad of things to do today, do you know what that means? Like it means a lot. So a lot of feet. So what are these guys? Yeah. Centipedes, millipedes, all these things like this. Many pairs of jointed appendages, 2 body sections, a head and a trunk is really it. 1 pair of antennae in the head, simple eyes. They do have a lower jaw and an upper jaw, and they do have a respiratory system.
Oh my gosh.
I think this guy is so cool. Is some kind of a flower mantis. So what's the ecology of insects? That's important. We have to have insects in our ecosystem. So they comprise over 80% of the terrestrial species of animals on the entire planet. So 80% of our animals on the planet are some kind of insect. So they drive the production of essential seeds, fruits, vegetables via pollination. If we have problems with what they called CCD, it was colony collapse disorder. It was issues we were having with bees, honeybees, not carpenter bees because they're a disaster, but honeybees in particular. We were having, there was some kind of pathogen that hit them. I think it was a virus actually, and they were passing it to one another when they would meet, not in their hives, and they bring it back to their hives, their whole hive would get sick, and all these bees were dying. And a couple years ago, it was a really big concern because you have entire colonies collapsing. So colony collapse disorder. What happens if there's no bees? What happens to us if there's no bees?
The flowers won't pollinate, the animals can't eat flowers, so they'll die, and then the animals that eat those animals will die, and then we can't eat the animals.
We can't eat the fruit. Yeah, we don't get fruit. We don't get exactly fruit, and then it affects the entire ecosystem. It's super, super important that we have bees.
So bees are supposed to have people. No, we're supposed to have insects to sting us on each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody in the ecosystem has an important role. If you take out one thing, it affects something else. Like I would love to get rid of mosquitoes, but I think bats are awesome, and it would cause problems for bats because bats eat mosquitoes. So if you look, insects are a keystone species. Do you guys remember what a keystone species was? There was a slide and it had a beaver at the bottom. So what was it?
Took out the top, if you took out the keystone of like
Yeah.
the arch, the whole thing.
That's correct. Very good, Claire. So, yeah, the keystone is the thing at the top. It's usually shaped like this, and it's the top of a stone arch, and it's what holds the whole arch together. If you take it out, it all collapses. So animals are keystone species. I mean, insects are keystone species. So if we lose insects or even certain species of insects, everything collapses, and that's not good. We have to have them. So they form the base of complex ecological food webs, agricultural, urban areas. They shape the appearance, beauty, complexity of these landscapes. Think about what birds eat. We don't think about what toads and amphibians eat. If we lose insects, we lose all kinds of things above them, which is pretty much everybody, because they're the bottom of the web. So at the same time, many insects are significant pests in agricultural, crops, and urban areas. You ever had like those, what are those tomato hornworms get on your tomatoes in the summer? You ever seen them? They're big green things, they have little spines on them. They somehow arrive. We still can't figure out how they get there, but they're the same color as the tomato plant, and they're hard to find, but they will get on there and eat it, eat it, eat it. And my mom had some little guys that got on her hibiscus, and they were specific to hibiscus, and they destroyed it. Like they would just munch the leaves so they look like lace because they leave the little veins. It was crazy. So we have to be careful about how we deal with them. So they can also spread diseases that endanger human, plant, and animal health. Can you think of a disease you can get from an insect?
You used to get yellow fever from mosquitoes.
You can basically get any.
Yeah, you can get Lyme disease from a tick. Do you know Zika virus? If you remember the, yeah.
Should a disease go, like, if it's a disease, it could go by anywhere, so.
Yeah, it
you can
depends.
basically get any disease.
It depends. Some things like if a dog has kennel cough, you're not going to get a cold from them because that's specific to dogs. But a lot of animals that carry blood, like animals that take blood meals, like mosquitoes in particular, they can spread all kinds of things. How was the Black Plague spread? Do you remember? Rats, but rats weren't the real cause. It was the fleas on the rats. The fleas on the rats were biting people and passing Black Plague around, which killed, oh my gosh, a massive proportion of the population of Europe. It was really bad. So invasive insect species can destroy crops, upset the balance of healthy ecosystems, threaten global biodiversity, food security, and human livelihoods. Okay, we have been invaded by at least 3 invasive insect and actually arachnid species in the last couple of years. One of them are the, see, I keep getting them in here. There's one up there. There's 2 of them. They've been in my house the last couple of days. I've been trying to get them. Those are not ladybugs. Those are not indigenous ladybugs. Those are the Asian, Japanese ladybug imposters. And they're not indigenous to here. They cause problems. What's the other one that keeps getting into everybody's house?
Stink bugs.
Yep, those stink bugs, those brown murmurated stink bugs are not our stink bugs. Those also came from Asia.
I saw that mantis, the first thing I saw that it looked something like ritual.
Yep, and they're not supposed to be here. What's the one that we all summer and fall, we were like, oh my goodness, I've never seen so many of these in my life. We could see them all.
Spiders.
Yes, the Joro spiders, remember? They covered all the cables on between telephone poles and stuff. They would spread, they were everywhere. They're those giant yellow and black spiders with big legs. They're like this big. Joro spiders, right?
I think I saw about
in like the woods when you went back there?
Yeah. I sprayed my backyard because the birds haven't figured out how to eat them and they're causing a problem. I figure if they're in the woods, it's their problem. But if they're in my yard, it's my problem. I sprayed about 33 of them one day in my yard. All right. So lastly, we got to wrap up here. Insect-borne diseases cause millions of human deaths each year. So here's a guy that's showing you some really amazing camouflage here. Actually, we'll come back to that one in a second. Let's do this one first. Let's look at our answers. So arthropods are invertebrates and they have body parts that can bend. They have an exoskeleton and number of body segments, 2 to 3. This is for crustaceans, and 5 pairs of legs. And then their antenna, they can have 2, it says right here. So all crustaceans live on land, false. Some live in the ocean or sometimes in freshwater, like you can find crayfish. The crayfish you find around here, if you find them in a river or in a stream, they're called Chattahoochee crayfish and they are endangered. So be aware of that before you mess with them. So arachnids have, there we go, a body section called an abdomen, and they don't have antenna. Spiders don't have antenna. So here we go. We have our spiders, mites, ticks, scorpions. Centipede is a predator. A millipede is a scavenger. And then our centipede has 1 pair of legs on each segment. The millipedes have 2 pairs of legs on each segment. That's how you can tell them apart. And here's your head, thorax, abdomen, right? That's how you can tell what's what. And then decomposers are going to eat waste of dead organisms, and food chain shows how energy moves. So lastly, Echinodermata. We're going to fly through here. Okay, so this is our lab today. So Echinodermata, they're exclusively marine. Their larva shows bilateral symmetry. They're trypoblastic again. Organ systems have some grade of organization. They are true coelomates. Their bodies are uniquely shaped. It can be star-like, elongated or spherical. Bodies unsegmented without a head. Surfaces covered with what we call spicules or spines. Body cavity has a water vascular system. Sea stars in particular have a water vascular system. That's how they move, by shifting water around inside their bodies. They have sometimes tube feet. So here are our classes. Asteroidea, these are our sea stars. And then these guys right here, Ophiurodia, I always get this wrong. Ophiurodia, I always get them wrong. These are the brittle stars. They look like sea stars, but see, they have like this kind of rounded center. It's not connected to the legs in such a broad manner. And then you've got these dudes, which are Echinoderms. These are sand dollars and sea urchins, which we're going to be doing today, a sea urchin. And we have these dudes. They stick to the bottom and they have these little feather-like things. They don't even look like a plant. And then these sea slugs, sea cucumbers. I love sea cucumbers. They're amazing. So they have no arms, bilaterally symmetrical. Their body's rather soft compared to some other echinoderms, and they're sedimentary feeders, and they're really freaking cool. So I'm going to save these 2 videos for you guys to, I'll put them in the video list, and you should probably look at them. This one's about sea stars, and you can see what they actually look like when they're not dried up, which is how you usually see them. So here's our last answer. They have tube feet, right? And they have water vascular system. Okay, so we will start for lab today. And I'll put those 2 videos, like I said, in your email, so you'll have it. All right, so if you want to stay put for a minute, because we're going to go over stuff, but if you want to tell them in the pub that we're ready. So I want to go over it over here before we all take off into lab. Grab my, y'all want to come on in for a minute? Come over to the living room first, and we'll go over some stuff before we start. What's up?
Yeah.
All right, come on in here. So I want to give you a quick overview of what we're doing before we do it, because we have a lot to do today. And the only way to do it is to maximize your time. And the way to maximize your time is to do it in exactly kind of the order I'm going to show you. Because if you bounce around, it's not quite going to work. The first thing you're going to do is start your sea urchin project. Now your sea urchin, I'm gonna grab one of these little sheets over here. You're gonna start by collecting your stuff. Your sea urchin off the dining room table. Everybody has one, their names on there. They're pretty much all the same size, except I had a few that were kind of big guys, and I had to jam them in slightly bigger jars because I didn't want to crack them, okay? So you're gonna follow this set of directions here, all right? It's gonna tell you to get on your apron and your gloves, and you're gonna take your little sea urchin and you're gonna bring it over here to the counter, and there's a big beaker in the middle, and you're going to open it up and you're gonna gently pour off the bioperm solution, which is the preservative that they're sitting in, okay? You're just gonna pour it off. And then you're going to put some bleach solution in it. This is bleach. It's barely diluted. It's like 90% bleach. It is the easy pour bleach, which means it's the kind of syrupy bleach that they make now, so it doesn't splash so much. But if you get it on your clothes, you're gonna bleach your clothes. So you're gonna wanna put an apron on it, and you're gonna wanna be very careful. And I'm gonna put some in the small beaker so that it's easier for you to pour. And I'll just keep refilling it as needed. So you're gonna put enough bleach in to cover your sea urchin. You're gonna put your lid back on, and you're gonna leave it over here by your lab. And every so often, you're gonna pick it up and just sort of swirl it. You're not gonna shake it, just sort of swirl it, okay? Then we're gonna move on to the rest of lab, and you're gonna get your sea star out. You already have one, and you're gonna keep that bag, because the bag that it's in is your bag for all of your dissection waste. So all your animal pieces, remainders of animals, or whatever that you're dissecting today are going in the bag, okay? So don't lose your Ziploc bag. That's what it's for today. The sea star part doesn't really involve any cutting. It's some more looking at it. Like, it's gonna tell you some stuff about them here. You're gonna kind of look at them, work your way through. I'm gonna bring the paper towels up so you have them. And it's gonna tell you to look at it, locate parts of its body, this kind of thing. There's not really much like cutting it up or anything. Like, it even says right here, you don't have, it doesn't say anywhere here that you need a scalpel. Yes.
Are we able?
If you have time, yes.
Okay.
So after that, you're gonna move on. This should take you 5 to 10 minutes. You kind of have to move through this part, okay? When you're done with him, put him in the little bag, okay? After that, you're gonna, so this is all the stuff you're doing. You're gonna label him. You can do one per group if you want, just as long as it's done. I wanna be sure that everybody understands what they've seen, okay? Then your squid comes up. Now, today is going to be one of the stinkier labs. Next week, we have a fish as well. That's going to be stinky. Sea animals smell, okay? They just do. Even in the solution, they do. You're going to open up your little sea squid there. I gave you a pair of scissors to open up the package. Don't be surprised when you open it up if you go, oh, Lord, because they are not going to smell well. And you're going to follow. These directions are not written like steps. And it says things like, turn it into Mrs. Whomever. This was just a well-written lab. So obviously, Mrs. Whomever isn't here. So you're going to work through it here and look for all these different structures. It's going to tell you what to find, and you're going to do just kind of step by step as you go. You're going to end up opening it up. This is more of your step by step here. You're going to look for all these different body parts, make sure you find them. When you're done with the squid, so you found all these body parts, you're going to put it in that bag. Ziploc bag. Now around this time, this should probably take, our lab is 1 hour and 15. It should take you about 5 minutes for the sea urchin, 5 to 10 for this. This is going to take you maybe 40. I mean, you're going to really want to work through this carefully, okay? Then you're going to take your little sea urchin, okay? And that will have been changed from waste bioperm to waste bleach. You're going to pour your bleach out. Then you're going to put water in. You're going to want to get most of your bleach out, okay? Then you're going to put water in, put the lid back on it. You're going to go over to the table with your little thing, and there is a bag for everyone with their name on it. You're going to put the sea urchin in the jar in first. If you have one of the bigger jars, it may not fit. There are some Ziploc bags you can use. It's the little jars that are all the same, absolutely fit. Slide it in, and then you're going to take exactly what it says here. You're going to take 2 swabs, 2 scrubby toothpicks, 2 cotton balls, 1 vial of soap, 1 pair of gloves, 1 paper towel, load it up, take the bag home. Sometime tonight, certainly not more than, 12 hours from now, because there is still some bleach in your water because you didn't rinse it off. You're gonna have to take that guy out and clean it. There are instructions here on exactly how to clean it. It's gonna involve taking a bowl from your house and sitting down with some clean water and kind of scrubbing them off. When you're done, they're gonna look like the example that's on the tray over there. I did mine already. And you're gonna find their Aristotle's lantern, which is sitting next to mine over there. You're gonna wash and dry your jar, put it back in, and bring it in next week for everybody to see. Everybody's gonna have theirs. Here's mine.
So I'm supposed to take it home?
Yeah, you're gonna take it home and work on it. You're gonna follow exactly these directions, and then you're gonna bring it back and show it to everybody. And
I don't
No.
think mine will come back.
and I'm gonna keep the jar, but then you're gonna take your urchin home and it's yours to keep because they're really cool. Okay. All right. So what are we doing first? Everybody's doing what first? Sea urchin. So find your sea urchin and get your gloves and your apron ready, all that stuff. Bring it on over. There you go. And you're gonna gently pour that yuck off and pour the bleach on. And I'm gonna get the bleach into an easier container to deal with, so. Directly into that little bucket that says waste bioperm, that's where it's going. There you go. Yep, you got some big ones. You guys got the ones that wouldn't fit. Oh, yeah. Okay, here's gonna be your bleach solution.
Actually got more than
Yep, there you go. I'm gonna pour it in here so that it's easier to get out. And I'll keep reloading this as necessary, okay? So just, you're gonna wanna pour this in here. You're gonna wanna pour this in until it covers your little critter. And then you're gonna wanna put your lid back on. And
I got it.
they will dissolve. Really quick.
Anybody home?
Lid on and
I might
sitting
not
by
even
your
like
workstation.
I got 7 siblings. 4 of them.
There you go.
And then these go over.
No, keep them with you. You guys are gonna want to toss them around a little.
Is there anyone?
Yes.
That's a what?
What is it?
Try to make. Ethan's right there, James is there.
I promise.
Yeah. Yeah, just gently kind of swirl them around.
I think I saw the apron.
Yeah, you're supposed to be-
Like this.
I don't think that's the right size for you.
Carefully watch the
Yeah,
hood.
you should go grab one. I don't think you're gonna want one.
Yeah.
This is mine.
I've got it yesterday.
Got it.
I got one.
There you go. Perfect.
I don't even remember. I don't know.
All right, there you go. Bring it close to you, so you don't have to cross counter. Lily, Lily's important. Mine was going Perfect, and Claire has the bleach. There you go. Just until it covers. Right up to it covers.
Most people would find the behind the scenes of fish. It smelled like bacon. And it smelled like bacon and fish.
What smells like bacon and fish?
The behind the scenes of the aquarium.
Perfect.
Oh.
There you go.
It's not on it.
Don't. You just pour it off and I can use it. Yeah, now what is this? Squid.
Those were some scrumptious.
I have to pour them out.
I've got to reload that on with this. Right here is your post bioperm. Just want to open it, it's easier.
Yeah, what is it? Around here somewhere. There he is. And the other one's not here.
Here's the bleach right here. Trying to get the rest of this bleach open. Let me run it
I was
over
thinking
water.
roll.
It's being done. Hang on, needs to get warmed up or something.
It will not all my aprons will roll perfectly with yours.
This is so small, no one's just this.
What?
This one's so small.
It doesn't have to go on your It doesn't have to go on your license.
Crushing.
Three.
No. I can't even, I barely fit in my head.
Mine's only trying to be talented, type behind my back.
See if I can get it to open, it doesn't work.
You know.
I think it's even
Grab
harder.
big
I
green.
work.
Yeah.
Are we working in team?
You're working in teams.
Just everybody's getting their own version. Just hang on.
I just so.
Ah.
with me and.
Hi, Pepper. Yeah. Okay, why is this not going? Hang on. This is being stubborn. Yeah, everything in here somewhere.
It's a 3D camera. Isn't that also like our
I don't have any crap. Still.
Yeah, check.
Are you still only Why?
Yeah.
This guy will not go. Why?
I don't know.
Yeah, I put the bleach in first and just let it sit. How many people are still using bleach? You.
He's a bit special.
You got it.
Wait, what?
Okay.
Because
It says nice.
Okay, let me find this over here. So on your way. I'll get bleach for you guys in a second. Just, it's fighting me.
They're both just zero sugar.
As it took away.
zero sugar definitely isn't bad. I like zero sugar. Sugar. Yeah, you can go over there. You gotta wait.
Okay, this is fun.
I
No, you don't need to rinse him really. He should be good.
I wanted grown up Macaulay Culkin to win the Super Bowl, but he didn't win the Super Bowl. Okay. No, exactly was like grown up Macaulay Culkin. Almost like not really Macaulay Culkin now, but like between Home Alone and where he is now. That's
Before that, with the weight thing.
I'll get it in a second. I'm trying to get this bleach open. Maybe you can help me try and do this.
I hit the vice grip.
I'm gonna crack my glass. But it's just not going to go.
Yes.
It's just glass on glass. You wanna try it while I go over there and deal with that biopharm? Okay, so biopharm almost full. Let me. It is super, it's just glass on glass. It's just friction, but it's not wanting to go. I don't know why.
Well, use your muscle.
Smells like bleach.
Yeah, the bleach does, for sure. Okay, here's more for biopharm. We're working on the bleach, we just can't get it open. I don't know why. I've never seen one stick like that. It's literally just glass on
I
glass.
thought it was yourself.
You know, like a decanter.
Oh, do it.
It's really hot.
It's just glass on glass. Maybe I need to get it cold. Yeah, no, I just ran some water over it. See if I'm doing warm water.
It's also hard.
It's crazy.
I think
Yeah.
What do we have companies online?
Oh, it's
I'm gonna believe that.
that's way too
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're working on it. The bleach is being pesky.
Okay.
Yes. Oh. I mean,
It's a special kind of food too. It is. It is. Technically, all bleach is bleach. But this is a easy pour bleach, so it doesn't splash, so you don't get it.
This is in bleach.
So boom, question answered.
yeah, I would.
It is. I saw a video.
That's what that was the argument we made.
So there's no snack art.
Like, I thought sleep was
It's funny how sometimes they sound like they're bring along. No, but like.
Oh, yeah, you guys go work on your lab. I'll try.
I need this real time.
Yes, you have.
I think I'm grabbing the camera guy.
There you go.
Oh, look at that.
I found the right tool. There you go. Pardon me. Found the right tool. Just took me a minute.
Oh, my,
Well, hey, at least you read it, you find pieces.
Okay.
Doesn't matter exactly how much bleach you put in there.
She said enough to cover.
Just enough to cover.
Oh, she got the bleach.
It's coming. I found a tool finally that would let me open it.
Cool.
I forgot.
Ask them. They know. Your team knows.
No, but
What's your boy, the watch?
they don't know. It's like a tool. It's like one of those can openers, like.
Oh, yeah. Like a church key. Yeah. All right. You still need bleach. Here's bleach. Hold on, I'll put some in this little. It's a little easier to deal with.
I'm like, I know.
Miss Danny, be very careful with it. Yes. Extra pencil. Look in the little cart right there. Yes.
There we go. Turn the seesaw over. With the hand blades, and opening in the middle of the central vessel.
I need my sunglasses.
Ready?
Yep.
Now you have.
Get Jerry poured out.
I can see that.
It's got a little crack there.
What's the lab notes?
It will dissolve all the tissue and all the spines. It will leave you with just the exoskeleton.
Have you had some bleach?
Yeah, here. Up here. You still need bleach in? You got it.
No, I got one.
Who still needs bleach?
I
Shannon.
need bleach.
Anybody else still need bleach?
What?
I put this?
Yeah, that in there. That's a little hard. Oh, you didn't even. There you go. All right. Who still needs Lily? Come around, Lily. And I'll bring some big cats.
no.
How many rows?
All right,
Is it
Israel.
That's his name.
He's stuck in my nose.
That's your name? Our sea
Yeah, we get to start the,
I need to
All right,
Yep.
anybody else need a bleach or are we good?
I introduced you guys to Big Tony.
Okay, we'll take a bleach out of the way.
Comes from rich Italian blood. Married her horses through those veins.
I remember when I was younger, I used to always say my mom.
All right, one more thing.
When I was younger, I used to always say, you know that old toy? Yeah, I get frustrated.
Cool.
Yeah.
Stop that. Jeez, still going.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I know.
You don't have a crown.
I prefer watching it on.
Where is?
I prefer watching.
I know, I got one.
Sweet.
You know why? 'Cause I'm a little kid.
That's part of it?
Or at least it wasn't. The regular bomb.
I forgot.
What does Echinoderm mean? What is derm means like outer layer. What is Echino?
Spiky. Spiky.
His name is Inside Out Part.
Oh, this is right.
He has a complicated one.
I have no clue.
He's half,
You know.
he's half Big Tony. He's half-
Echinoderm means spiny skin.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
The reserve
Big Tony.
When's the
Am
star?
I supposed to open it?
Patrick, that's what I should tell everybody they're cutting
Start
out.
early. Do we need to wash the water, or have you already done that?
What now?
Wash them off with water.
I've already drained them pretty good, so they're okay. Just as long as you have your gloves on, you'll be all right. No, they're very much dead. Very much dead, Anthony. No worries.
We should name our after this break.